Good morning, everybody. My name's Tom Larson. I'm with Ellen Curtis & Sons, and you guys are the proud recipients of some brand new SCBAs. And I know you've been waiting a long time to get these both delivered and also in service. So I'm excited to be here. This is just going to be an orientation on the SCBA. I'm going to talk about the lights, bells, and whistles, how they all work. And then I'd like to go out in the bay and we'll do kind of a quick exercise. I'll have each of you grab an SCBA and we'll kind of tear it down and put it back together just so you kind of get that first hands-on experience in a controlled environment. This is an open session, so please ask a lot of questions. This is for you guys. By raise of hand, how many of you are using this SCBA in another department? Okay, so a little bit of experience, not a whole lot. I would have expected more. MSA designed this SCBA back in 2014, so it's been in the marketplace for a long time. When they designed the SCBA, they reached out to the fire community and they said, hey, what do you want to see or what don't you want to see on an SCBA? And a lot of response came back and they said, take all of the electronic stuff off the mask. So this mask is very simple. It doesn't have batteries, it doesn't have any electronics, it's just a basic, simple mask. The nice thing about that is it keeps the cost down. So if the department's buying masks for every individual, the cost of the mask is relatively inexpensive. If you start adding electronics onto that, it gets pretty expensive. So very simple mask. It has a single radius lens, so the lens just bends in one direction. What that means, if you look through the lens at something across the wall and kind of rotate the lens through its vision there, you don't see any distortion. It's really clear. It's nice and clean, easy to look through. It doesn't give you a headache and wobbly eyeballs as you're looking through it. So that was one of the design features of the mask. Keep it simple, really good clear vision through this. If you're wearing the mask, you should have 80%, about 87% peripheral vision perspective, so you have really good vision out of this mask. If you look down over the nose cup, you should be able to almost see your toes. Might have to bend forward just a little bit. Again, a safety issue, you've got really good clarity looking through the mask. Large, medium, and small rubber skirts, so we can accommodate different face sizes and shapes. And we've gone through fit testing and we have not had any fit testing issues. Did you guys have issues fit testing your other product? A little bit?
Turn off the camera.
So really good design. So whatever they've done with the molding, I'll tell you that the potential leak point on this mask is right up here at the top. And I'm gonna kind of go through that a little bit more in detail when we start wearing the mask. When we put it on, I'll show you how to kind of minimize that leaking. Super critical that we have a good seal, all right? This is what they call the 5-point head harness. It's connected in 5 points. There is not a buckle up here. It's just nice and flat, so when you're wearing your helmet, it doesn't create a pressure point. But there are 4 adjustment straps on the side. So you got 2 at the jawline and 2 at the temple line. So pretty easy to don and to take care of that way. At the bottom of the mask, we've got 2 diameters of holes. You've got the large diameter hole and the smaller diameter hole. Both of those are sealing surfaces. And what I mean by that is when we take the second stage and snap it in, there's O-rings that protect atmosphere air from getting inside the mask. The outside ring, if you're looking at it, it has your heads-up display lights on the right-hand side as you're wearing it. So it's got the 4 heads-up display lights, probably no different than what you have now. 4 lights, if they're illuminated, will be green. 3 lights, if they're illuminated, will be green. Once it goes to 2 lights, it will turn to amber. And then once it goes down to 1 light, it will be a red light that's illuminated in there. On the left-hand side, as you're wearing it, looking down, you will see 3 little heads-up display lights. One of those is a low battery indicator. So if the battery on the SCBA is kind of dwindling in energy, it'll illuminate in amber color inside the mask, and it will also illuminate amber on the back of the frame. So we've got multiple identification of if that battery is getting kind of drained on energy. A second light that you would potentially see is what they call a heat saturation alarm. So if you're wearing your mask and you see a heat saturation alarm, the SCBA is going to go into an alarm and you'll see a light flashing up in your heads-up display light. The only way you're going to see that is if you are being overwhelmed with heat. So if you're training and you're going in and out of a burn building and doing a lot of training and exposed to heat for a long period of time, or an elevated heat source, you might see that alarm. But normal fire operations, you'll probably never see that. Okay, so the two lights on the side, one is a battery, one is a heat saturation. The third one is a telemetry light, and you guys don't have telemetry on these SCBAs, so you won't ever see that third light there. Okay. The smaller diameter hole is where the second stage is going to allow air to flow through. Air flows through this small diameter hole. It goes up through the face piece at the bottom right here, circulates on the lens, so we're trying to pick up the moisture that might be building up on the inside of that lens. You breathe it in through the inhalation valves, goes into your lungs. You breathe out through an exhalation valve in the bottom of the mask. That goes to atmosphere, so you're never breathing back into the SCBA, so we don't have a cross-contamination issue and a cleaning protocol on the SCBA. So if you're wearing a mask, you breathe into your mask, you're breathing out to atmosphere, and as long as you're not sharing masks, you shouldn't be getting anybody else sick, right? If you wear the mask and you're just doing some drills right now, I would suggest take the mask over to the sink, turn on the faucet, and just rinse it. When you rinse it, you want to pull up this chin box and you want to expose the exhalation valve that's down in the bottom of that. So right down in the bottom of that exhalation valve, we want to flow water through there because there's a little rubber seat, and if we flush any debris, sugary materials, saliva, that kind of stuff out of the mask, we won't have that exhalation valve sticking. So if you're just working a little bit, sweating a little bit, keep this thing nice and clean, flush it with fresh water, and then if you stand it up, the water is going to drain out the bottom and it will dry. So you could put it in your locker and grab it next go around. If you're wearing the mask at a fire and you get really dirty and you get this mask just encrusted with insulation or dirt or whatever, we can tear this mask apart very quickly, and I'll show you how to do it. You take a screwdriver, and there's a little slot at the bottom, and we're gonna pop our screwdriver in there. You might hear a clicking sound. Get it back in there. You might hear a clicking sound. You work with me, there it goes. And this cover plate pops up and off the bottom of the mask. So that comes up and off. That goes in the bucket of soapy water. What we're doing is exposing the exhalation valve. So this exhalation valve has a little bridge, a little spring right there, and if we take that off, that should stay connected, so that spring should stay connected to that little bridge. That goes in the bucket of soapy water, and what we're trying to get to is this is my exhalation valve. So it seats in the bottom of the mask. It has a little glide post in there to keep it aligned and oriented. So when you exhale, that just lifts up a little bit, and you breathe out of the mask, and then the spring closes it back up when you inhale. So as long as you keep this nice and clean, keep the bubble gum, chewing tobacco, and yesterday's pizza off of there, this will seal up nice and good, and it will be a good, safe seal from the environment. All right, so we'll talk with your SCBA techs and kind of go through this a little bit more in detail, but wanted to show you how quick and easy this mask is to tear apart and clean. So this is like the deep level cleaning. You shouldn't necessarily have to do this unless your mask gets really dirty. Any questions on this? All right, little spring goes back, little bridge slides into place. This snaps over the top and then clips down into place when we're back in business. The head nets can be removed, so all 5 connection points, if you take the buckle and you twist it to the side and just get it at a 90 degree, then you can take that little metal buckle and pop it off the little plastic stem, so all 5 points will disconnect from the mast. That way you could take this head net off the mast, throw it in a laundry mesh bag, clean it up that way if you want, or if we needed to replace straps or the head nets, they all come apart. So no tools required really to disassemble this mast. Put it back together, just put it over that button, stretch it, and you'll hear it snap back into place and you're good to go. Any questions on the mask? Nose cups come out and they go back in very easy. Don't suggest you do that. There's just a little trick to putting them back in, but it's super easy to put them in. If you do start disassembling them, we'll work with your technicians and kind of show you how to put those back together. Good? Cylinders. 4,500 minute or 4,500 PSI, 45-minute duration. So there's no change in the way your cylinders are performing as far as time. Same carbon wrapped. If you see a nick or a scratch on the cylinder, if it's through just the fiberglass outer wrapping, we're good to put some epoxy glue back over the top of it and we can keep those in service. But if you see a nick and a scratch that goes down into the black carbon material underneath this wrapping, we want to take it out of service and inspect it and look at it. It's potential it could be damaged to the point where we need to take it and remove it from service. All right, photoluminescent banding on it. The serial numbers are right here. You see the serial number and it's upside down. So we're gonna capture that for your inventory purposes. On the bottom of the cylinder, we've got a rubber boot, so a little rubber baby bumper that's gonna help protect that valve down on the bottom. Photoluminescent gauge, analog gauge down there. Does not have a locking hand collar, so we can open the valve and close the valve without having any locking mechanism on there. The other thing is there is a little triangle or a wedge on the bottom of this valve. That's really nice because it slides down into the SCBA and it captures in the perfect position to put our quick connect on there. So managing the cylinders, when you are doing your inspections on a daily basis, you want to make sure that the pressure is up in that green area. NFPA says cylinders that are stored need to be stored with at least 90% of their air pressure in the cylinder at all times. Okay? So with that wedge, the cylinder is going to slide down into the SCBA, and you can load it from the top, you can load it from the bottom up. It makes no difference. Just slide that down in there, and that wedge captures the cylinder in the perfect orientation. You guys are comfortable with quick connects, but this is just a little bit different design and style. It works the same way. Line it up, push it on. This gray collar moves over and twists and locks into place. So to remove that, just on the gray collar, give it a little twist and pull it away from the SCBA valve, and that will pop off. Very easy. So cylinders are gonna change out a little bit different than what you guys have done in the past. Slide them down in there, lock it in, you're good to go. The cylinder tensioning band is metal, and it maintains its shape nicely, so you don't have to use a hand to hold that out. Slide the cylinder down in, good to go. On this side, we've got a cam locking system, and we're gonna push that down, and it's got two buttons that lock into place. There's a little black button on the top, one on the bottom, so if you use your claw fingers, you should be able to pinch that and release. There is a spring that tensions the cylinder band. So if I'm gonna put some tension on that, I wanna adjust it so that this cylinder band starts to engage about the 2-3 o'clock position. This is just a little bit loose, so I'm gonna go to the opposite side. There's a little metal tab. I want to push down on that, wiggle this band back and forth, and I'm going to find the slot that starts to put tension on that at about the 2-3 o'clock position. So once I've got that and lock it into place, it's lifting up on that spring ever so slightly. So we want to keep a little bit of tension on that. So quick locking mechanism, adjust the cylinder band, cylinder's loaded, and you're good to go. Any questions? The back frame, the carrier harness, has different materials of construction. So if you look under the straps, you've got gray material. This is intended to slip and move on your turnout gear, kind of a slippery material. This black material is a little bit more tacky. So the intention is when you're wearing it, the shoulder straps will stay up in place, but your turnout coats can move and twist underneath the gray material on the straps. Parachute style buckles, so if you pull down on the strap, same as what you have, you just lift up on it and it's going to release, and that's the same on both shoulders and the waist belt. The frame itself has handle holds, so 500-pound pulling capacity. This is not intended as a repelling escape device. It's just a class 1 harness, just holds it in place. So 500-pound pulling capacity, 1,000-pound pulling capacity if you were to wrap some webbing through the top of that and pull somebody. Again, not a lowering device. The reason it's not considered a lowering device is this buckle is not a positive closure buckle. Okay, it just clips into place, push the button, and it will release. If you look at the male end of the buckle, it's got a little slot in the top of that. That little slot will release the battery from the back of the frame. Okay, so we'll come back to that in just a second. Let me jump into the battery. So when they designed this SCBA, one of the considerations was a single power source. So MSA came up with a rechargeable battery system, and they are the only manufacturer in the industry with a rechargeable battery system to date. So single battery powers up everything on the SCBA. This is a lithium-ion battery, so it's a smart charging system. If the battery is completely charged and you were using these SCBAs, you should be able to get 8 to 12 hours of operational runtime with all the lights, bells, and whistles running on this thing. So that usually doesn't happen with lights, bells, and whistles, so runtime's probably a little bit longer than that. So if I've got the battery installed, 8 to 12 hours of runtime. If I take a battery out and I need to charge it back up, it's only going to take a couple of hours to recharge the battery to get it back to full status. It does not have a memory, so if you deplete the battery a little bit and charge it back up, that's not going to create a memory in this battery system. The cool thing is MSA has a 15-year warranty on these batteries. If you have a problem with the battery for 15 years, it's going to be covered under warranty. So you're not going to be buying new batteries and shouldn't have to worry about the power source on these things. What are other questions on batteries? So if an SCBA was sitting in a reserve apparatus, we would ask that these batteries be changed on a monthly basis. If the SCBA is sitting on a daily basis, you're going to lose 1% of the battery per day. So after a month, you're going to lose about 1/3 of the battery's energy. Not a big deal. If you get a call, you go out, you're going to use the SCBA, you're going to be just fine in operation. After 2 months, you're going to lose about 2/3 of the battery energy. Go on a call, you're still going to be fine, but remembering to change batteries on a 2-month rotation is probably not going to be as easy as putting it on a monthly checkoff to just go change batteries on a monthly basis. Not suggesting you wait a month to change batteries. If you come on shift and want to change the battery in your SCBA, by all means, please do. If you want to change the battery every day, please do. It's not going to hurt the battery's charge. It's not going to burn up the warranty, so change the batteries as often as you like. If you look at the battery, there's contact points on one end. There's no contact points on the opposite end. If you look at it, it's got this cover plate. It kind of tapers a little bit. So I want to take the contact points, put them down, line up the battery, and snap it into place. When I put the battery in, the SCBA is going to cycle on. I've disconnected energy, I put a battery in, the SCBA is going to go through its cycle. And you hear a low chirp and a high chirp. You see a blue line scroll across the bottom. You see a box with a check mark that should be green, and the SCBA has gone through its diagnostics, all the electronics check out, and it's powered on. Now you might see a red box with dashes on it right now because I don't have any pressure on the SCBA. So this is turned on. So if I'm changing batteries and somebody's cooking bacon and it's time for breakfast and I put a battery in and walk away, this SCBA is going to go into an alarm. So I'm going to let it go through alarm so you can hear what it is. In 2013, they changed the alarm status on all of these. So you hear 3 escalations. That's escalation number 1, escalation number 2, escalation number 3, and then it goes into the final. Once it's in final alarm, you have to double tap, tap, tap. Either green button does exactly the same thing. So if it's in alarm, full alarm, and it won't shut off, tap, tap really quick, tap, tap, and it'll turn off. Once all the air pressure is drained out of the SCBA, tap, tap a second time, and you hear a high chirp, low chirp, and it will turn itself off. So now you can walk away and go finish breakfast and do your other chores, right? If you're doing daily checks and you walk in and you say, oh, I'm gonna see what my battery status is, grab the pass device. Either button does the exact same thing. Press and hold it for about 3 or 4 seconds, and it will give you a battery indication. So right now, this battery has 3 tick bars. 3 tick bars are green, so battery's still in good shape. Change battery whenever you want. That disappears. So if you're doing your daily checks, you want to check the battery, press and hold either button for about 3 or 4 seconds, and it will give you a battery indication. So there's typically 5 tick bars on a full battery. 5 tick bars are green, 4 tick bars are green, 3 tick bars are green, 2 tick bars turn to amber in color. Where's one of the places that you would see an amber light if the battery was getting low? Yeah, left side of the mask, one of those heads-up display lights. The other one would be one of these indication points on the back of the SCBA. One of these little lights, and I don't remember which one it is because I don't see them very often. All right, so you will see multiple areas where that battery is being discharged. So if you're doing your daily checks and you see that the battery is down a couple of tick bars and you want to change it, you grab the waist belt. The male end of that waist belt has that little slot in the top of it. Put it at the top of the battery and poke it in there, and the battery will pop out. It's spring loaded, so that battery comes out. Put it in a charger, and I didn't bring one in, but every station will have a 6-bank battery charger. Little device, we drop the chargers in. You guys are all familiar with that. On the front of it, it has LED lights, and each one of those charging slots are independent. So if I put a battery in, it's going to check the integrity of this battery and it will charge this battery. If I move batteries in other slots, it will do the same thing. If I take a battery out and put it in, it's going to show a red LED light first. Once that battery is completely charged, it will turn green. These batteries can stay in those chargers for a day, a week, a year. It's not going to cook them, bake them, hurt them. And how long's the warranty? 15 years. So who cares? So grab a battery, switch batteries, drop it in, make sure you go through the cycle, turn it off, take your old battery and drop it back into the charger. The intention is each station will have a 6-bank charger and there's going to be 5 or 6 batteries in there. Somebody is going to take all those batteries and go to one apparatus, change all the batteries in that apparatus. Take those batteries that you just changed, drop them in the charger, wait an hour, come back, grab those batteries, go to the second apparatus and rotate the batteries through the system. And if you do that on a monthly checkoff sheet, we check off the box and we're good to go. If you want to change a battery on your SCBA, by all means do it as often as you want to. These contact points are gold plated, and down inside the battery, down inside the SCBA, if you look down in there, there's little pogo pins. And a little pogo pin is a little pogo pin, and it's on a spring, and when you push down on it, it moves up and down. We need to make sure that we keep the moisture out of this connection point. There's an O-ring on the battery, there's an O-ring down inside the SCBA. But if you're changing batteries and it's raining outside, or you're doing it when you're getting squirted with water, we're gonna get water on these contact points. What happens to the flashlight that you have in your glove box that you've left there for a year, that you take the alkaline batteries out of? What happens to the batteries? they corrode. You'll get corrosion on these things. We want to keep the moisture out of these because this is not covered under warranty. And if they get really bad, that's a $5,000 repair. So don't be the person that gets moisture down in there. Keep the moisture out. If the moisture gets down in there, use a little air hose, let it air dry for a while. Our environment here, that thing will dry out in no time. Be good to go. Just eyeball it. So one of the things you're gonna do when you change a battery, just look down in there, make sure there's no moisture, make sure there's no moisture. Snap it in. What happens to my SCBA when I put a battery in? Cycles on. So you're gonna kind of wait for a second, let it cycle on, go through your other checks, let that power up all the way, a little blue line scrolling across the bottom, and then I'm gonna, how many times do I tap it?
Twice.
And it should cycle off. This is your voice amplification speaker. Again, all the power source is that single battery, and the microphones are in the second stage regulator. And the second stage regulator snaps into the mask, and the microphones are in the bottom. So these two little holes right there are the microphones. So the regulator is directional. What I mean by directional is it has to line up specifically, and then it just pushes straight in. When you pull it out, you're gonna pinch the top and bottom button and pull it straight out. There's a little slot right here in the top button, and there's a little notch right there. That just needs to line up. We kind of did this when we did the mask fit testing. You had to line it up, and it just pushes straight in. One of your observations is going to be the two O-rings on this second stage. How many sealing surfaces on the mask?
Two.
There's two O-rings, so you got a gray one and a red one, orange one. So make sure those are in place, and it's just quick little visual, make sure they're in place. The other cool thing about the regulator is the button on the bottom stops the airflow from going through the regulator. So in one motion, if I'm wearing this, I can reach up and I can pinch the two buttons. The bottom button stops my airflow, and I can remove it from the mask. I don't have to stop the airflow and then remove the mask some other way, which is going to be a new concept for you guys anyway. The bypass valve is a true bypass. If I open it a little bit, I get a little airflow. Open it more, I get more airflow. You're gonna have to train with this because when you turn it off, I refer to it as a soft stop. When I go to turn it off, it's gonna stop the airflow right there, but I haven't turned that valve all the way to the end. I need to make sure I go all the way to the end and just push a little bit and get it to stop at the very end of that rotation. If you turn it off, and you get to that soft stop, and you wiggle your hose, and you're in an environment where it's really noisy, that thing's gonna open up, and every time you move, you're gonna lose precious breathing air to atmosphere. So you've got to make sure that you turn this off. Once you get to that hard stop, it's not gonna open up. Training point, right? Okay. Button stops the airflow, pinch, remove, make sure that's turned off. Once I've checked both valves, I can reach back and open my valve. When I crack the valve, how far do we rotate the valve on my cylinder to open it? And then you turn it back. All right. So once it turns on, it's gonna power up the SCBA. Now I should have pressure, and it's gonna be a digital display and an analog display. So I have a little bit of redundancy built into that. The digital side of things are gonna turn off because MSA is trying to manage, maintain energy in that battery. If you're wearing this and it's hanging down, you don't need to be looking at it. It doesn't need to be illuminated. But if you pick it up, it should illuminate. So you can look at it quickly, drop it, and it's gonna turn off. If you're looking at it and it turns off, you can always push one of the buttons and it will turn it back on. So you can always have access to that digital display. The primary display that pops up is just the pressure on the SCBA cylinder. If you're looking at it and it's illuminated and you see the pressure on there, you can push the button again and you get to the secondary information. Secondary information on this right now has the bottom half is green and it's dashed out. That is time remaining for me to breathe on this SCBA until I go into my low air alarm. Right now it's not calculating anything because I haven't been breathing on it. So once I do go on air and start breathing on it, that's gonna first pop up with 99. And then it's gonna start calculating and it'll tell me, hey, you got 30 minutes, you got 15 minutes, you got 12 minutes, you got 5 minutes until you go into a low air alarm. Okay, but the only way that works is you gotta start breathing on the SCBA and it builds the algorithm for your specific breathing rate. The other stuff that you see on there on the top of that, as you're looking at it, the left-hand side, there's a little icon that looks like a thermometer. That's the heat saturation alarm. If you're wearing the SCBA and you get overexposed to a heat, that thing's gonna turn red. You're gonna see a display here and it's gonna go into an alarm. You're probably not gonna see that, but that's where you could see that display is on that secondary display. On the right-hand side, as you're looking at it, you see the battery icon. So that battery icon, when the SCBA is on, gives you a visual of what's going on with the battery on this SCBA. So there's a lot of information that's on this secondary display screen. You have to be looking at the pressure, has to be illuminated, then you push a button and you can see that secondary information. Good? You guys are quiet this morning.
Where's the sensor for the heat?
It is, great question, it's in the passive device. So the thermocoupler that's collecting the heat is in this thing. So if you're standing at the door and this is out in the breeze nice and cool, the cylinder's probably gonna get hot and melt off your back, that won't go into the alarm. But if you're standing the opposite direction and this is taking the heat up front, you're probably gonna go into the alarm. The voice amplification, yeah, fire away.
What, you said it'll go into an alarm. At what time does an alarm? 15, 20 minutes? When does that alarm go off?
For the heat saturation alarm?
No, you said it calculates my air and my rate
Oh.
of consumption, and then it will go into an alarm. How many minutes do I have when an alarm?
Well, it depends on your breathing rate, so I'm not gonna answer it in minutes, I'm gonna answer it in pressure. So if your SCBA is full, you got 4,500 PSI of pressure, right? So the low air alarm goes off at 1/3 of that remaining air pressure. So 1/3 of the remaining air pressure. And that is, if you do the math, I don't know, it's 22 something.
So it's going off not based on my rate of consumption, but based on the tank's pressure.
It's based off the minutes remaining are based off your rate of consumption. If you're breathing casually, you're gonna have more minutes to go to the low air alarm point. If you're breathing fast, you're gonna have fewer minutes based on that breathing rate to get to that low air alarm point. Did that answer the question? Try to stump me again. Probably.
Are those head lights and heads-up display for the amount of air, are they in 25% increments?
They are.
Okay.
That can be changed, but it doesn't make sense because the algorithm in the display, the lights right now, if you think of it in quarters, you have basically a gas tank, and if it's full, you have the full tank. Once you lose a light, you have 3/4 of a tank, they're still green. Then you go to a half and those turn amber in color. We can change it so that you see it in thirds, but the lights are still gonna calculate based on the pressure. So, and you have 4 lights, and if we do it in thirds, it doesn't make sense. So we leave it in that quarter increment. Yeah. Great question. All right, when you don the SCBA, we're gonna suggest that you put it on over your shoulder, coat style, whatever you do. We are gonna suggest that you do the waist belt first. And the reason we wanna do the waist belt is because this back frame has a swiveling and pivot mechanism, and you can adjust this. So this is gonna fit longer torsos and shorter torsos. So pull this pad forward. You got a metal bar that stretches across there. If you pull it away from the SCBA, this thing will slide up and down into 3 different positions. So I got somebody with a little bit shorter torso, they can carry the weight of the SCBA in the small of their back, And then the distance from here to the top of the shoulders is a little bit shorter distance. You can stretch it out for use that are medium sized, and those of you that are tall drinks of water, you can stretch it out a little bit farther. The intention is when you put the SCBA on, we want you to do up the waist belt first. So the SCBA goes on. I'm gonna zip up my turnout coat so I'm not being sloppy here. I know how to use my zipper. SCBA waist belt goes on first. So we want you to take the SCBA, hike it up into the small of your back, get those straps pulled up and pull the straps forward. I think this is reverse of what your SCBA does, maybe not on this, but on the mask it is. Okay, so pull them forward to tighten. So now I've got the weight of the SCBA in the small of my back. The next thing we would suggest is that you would do the chest strap second. So we want you to come down and do the chest strap. The reason for that is because if you're a big barrel chested guy and you do this, or gal, and you connect that up, it's gonna fit a little bit different when you pull the shoulder straps down. If you're carrying the weight here, the chest strap next, and then the shoulder straps, you're just gonna tighten basically for comfort. So I'm not super tall in stature, so I might reach back here, and I can get my arm back there, lower that one position down. So now it lowers the SCBA cylinder on my back, changes the way it feels a little bit, okay? So step one, step two, and then adjust the shoulder straps. We want you carrying the weight of the SCBA in the small of your back. These are just for comfort. Second stage, you need to pinch both of the buttons to remove it from this little holster. Second stage, it just snaps in. Pinch both buttons, remove it. Okay, SCBA is turned on. Got my pressure, got my time remaining, but I've got dashed out. The SCBA mask I'm gonna put on. When we put the mask on, I'm gonna suggest that you tighten the two bottom straps first, tighten the two top straps, reposition it, and then tighten the bottom ones and the top ones a second time. So remember, where's the leak point on this mask? Okay, so it's real critical that you figure out where that mask should fit and feel on your face. So I'm gonna stretch those out a little bit. If you have long bangs, oh, by the way, motion sensor located in the pass device. So if you hit it, it should stay silent. You don't have to do this. So if you have bangs, long hair, suggest that you put the mask over the front, get your bangs out of the way, face goes into the mask. Grab that little black tab, pull it down over the back, the straps all straightened out. Bottom ones get tightened up first, top ones get tightened